Welcome back to Media 7. 100% pure New Zealand. We've all heard the words, but as Tourism New Zealand's keynote pitch passes its 10th birthday, is it time to think about where it's going? Well, let's start with where it came from. This pretty-looking website celebrates the 10th anniversary of a super slogan, 100% pure New Zealand. And its immaculate conception amid the dreaming spires of Adland. But that's not how it really happened. In 1999, the Tourism Board was in crisis. Its Minister, Murray McCulley, was referred to the Audit Office, and Jenny Shipley couldn't remember whether she'd had dinner with Saatchi's boss, Kevin Roberts, or not. A completely different campaign, touted by Roberts, a kind of cross between The Truman Show and Xena Warrior Princess, had become so controversial and costly it was dumped. The gig went to another agency, M&C Saatchi, whose team of Australian creatives had a mere 5 weeks to come up with a more sensible idea. And they did. Although not everyone liked it.
The worry with the Tourism Board's approach to its business is that the clean, green, 100% pure image may be what the industry wants to project, rather than what most potential visitors are seeking.
But 10 years later, 100% pure New Zealand is our image overseas. It may be the most successful marketing slogan in our history.
Welcome to the youngest country on earth.
It's keeping a few celebrities in pocket money. Here's Tana and Petra working the Rugby World Cup market.
Don't get me wrong, being a Kiwi girl, I love rugby. I just don't need to live and breathe it every day.
And it's even spawned its own ironic tributes, courtesy Flight of the Conchords. But does a change of leadership at Tourism New Zealand signal a refresh for the slogan? And more troublingly, when our other major export earner is filling our waterways with waste, can we really claim to be pure at all? I'm joined now by the man in the middle of all that, departing Tourism New Zealand Chief Executive George Hickton. Vincent Heringer, publisher of Marketing magazine, which recently ran the rule over the Pure New Zealand strategy, and environmental journalist and a columnist in another part of Vincent's empire, I gather, Dave Hansford.
That's right.
Welcome to you all, gentlemen. George, your contract isn't being renewed this year. Whose choice was that?
It's my choice. I've been there for 10 years. I've done 3 contracts, and it was always planned that I'd step down at this stage. And I think it's time for someone else to take over the leadership of the organisation and the brand.
Does that signal a change just for you personally, or do you think that the brand needs a new?
No, it doesn't signal a change for the brand at all. In fact, it was interesting, just today the Tourism Industry Association has been conducting a roadshow, and they came to see me because they're incredibly surprised at the complete support the tourism industry gives the brand. And I suppose if what they're saying is, look, there'll be a change of leadership, but this brand can't change. We are now living up to the expectation, and we've got to keep going. You came into the job with a reputation as a change agent, and you stayed a decade. Did you expect to do that? No, I didn't. I had. So why did you stay so long? Well, I enjoyed it, and the opportunity to brand your country isn't given to you often. In fact, I think a lot of people didn't realise we were quite going to do that either, but I started to really enjoy tourism. It's a very positive industry, and also representing New Zealand internationally is something that really is the best job I've ever had, so I did a decade. Vincent, you wrote about the brand. How would you rate the brand and its management? It was an interesting story, I thought.
Well, I think the metrics are the thing you've got to look at. I mean, the typography is great and there's lots of nice imagery, but in the end, these kind of campaigns are measured by the numbers, and the numbers do stack up. I mean, George will know them better than I will, but in the 10 years that campaign has been running, there's been a 50% growth in the number of tourists to New Zealand. You can't attribute, I mean, tourism is growing internationally, but it's not growing that fast. And behind those numbers sits a whole bunch of disciplines that, from a marketing branding point of view, if you look at the disciplines applied, they're quite impressive. But probably the hardest thing that a brand marketer can do is stay on message despite the change of shareholder, which he has had, I think, 25 board members, you said, since he took over. And that takes a certain amount of belligerence and, you know, to be admired. It's interesting that you mentioned the numbers, because, George, I can recall doing a story very early on in your reign, and I was impressed that you were able to, say, run a magazine campaign in Germany and be able to tell
quite precisely what you were getting back out of it. Was that always part of the strategy, that you needed to know what was working? Yeah,
we're a government-funded entity, so we tend to get monitored to death, I would say, about how well you spend that money. And there's always a sort of a treasury view that does marketing really work. You imagine the difficulty a marketing department has in a corporate. They're struggling to justify their existence. Well, we're the marketing department for New Zealand, so we have always had to have metrics that prove it. The good thing is that we have demonstrated it. We've doubled the foreign exchange earnings for tourism in this time. It's now the largest single export earner.
So that's overtaken dairy, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. And those sort of things have really helped. I think also people have grown up with their appreciation of tourism, and it's not sort of a casual leisure industry that we can sort of take or leave. It's now vital to our future economy.
Dave Hansford, what do you make of that, the marketing department for New Zealand?
Well, I think I have to agree. By any measure, I think it's been a spectacularly successful campaign, and the figures speak for themselves. I guess my concern, and that of a great many other New Zealanders, is that it appears to be built on sand.
So what do you do about that? You can't, surely you can't go out to the world and say, it's quite nice, but the streams are a bit dirty.
Well, that's right. I don't think a 60% pure campaign would work at all.
It's been suggested.
Yeah, it's difficult to know where to start, and I think that, while nobody can deny that the campaign is great, we have now a tiger by the tail. And we have to decide what we're going to do about that, because I think, as George well knows, and certainly as Vincent does through his readership of Good magazine, the age of the homespun jerkin-clad bearded hippie is gone. And people are immensely environmentally literate these days, and the kind of facts and figures that actually make something of a lie of the 100% pure brand are easily obtainable to anybody with an internet connection.
So people don't seem to be looking at those facts and figures, judging by the numbers. I mean, are tourists really making their decision on whether we live up to our brand promise?
Maybe some tourists aren't, but of course, Europe and America are two very, very important markets to us. Now, I think that anybody who's concerned enough, for instance, about hopping on a long-haul jet and creating that kind of climate impact is probably sufficiently concerned to think about the destination they're going to. And I think it's an utterly natural expectation that they might want to find out a little bit more about New Zealand's environmental virtue, if you like, before they're going to make a commitment like that. And I think we are going to face a great deal more scrutiny.
Does this come through? I presume you do market research. Does this come through in your research?
Yeah, it does. And the point's very valid. We can't... this is aspirational. But I would say, what else have we got? If we want to cut through in a crowded international world and get above the chatter, we have to have a point of difference. And our point of difference is in this space. And we've simply branded it 100% pure, more as the experience than the environment. But it's a place that people expect New Zealand to be in, and they're going to expect us to do better in it. The interesting thing, though, is we track their environmental issues and concerns. The thing they're most worried about? Recycling and rubbish. The things we can fix, the easy things to do. So, we and I have no doubt that eventually their expectations will grow, as will the world's, but New Zealand will have to lift with those. But we've got a foundation. It's not like we just thought about this thing. We've been here for 10 years, and all we're saying, yep, it's right, and we're moving on it. And
so, yeah,
the stakes are actually going up because, when they started, it was a tourism brand, and I remember asking George years ago, would you like to expand this brand? And he was very determined to say, actually, it's about tourism and everyone else can just push off. Well, that's changed now because the Ministry of MFAT, is that Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also Trade and Enterprise are now looking at the brand and saying, under John Key's encouragement, that this could be a brand that gets brought into other industries. So I guess, that does actually raise the stakes for New Zealand, because suddenly it gets tougher. And just as a little anecdote, a Tesco buyer recently called up so Tesco's is a supermarket in the UK, called up an abattoir and said, we can't take your meat because the sheep have been mustered by a sheep dog. which places the sheep under enormous stress, and it's an unethical position for you to say, could you just get rid of the dogs, please? And, you know, that's slightly idiotic, but the level of scrutiny over food now is so great. And if we start to migrate this brand into the food territory, boy, we have raised the game, and that's where I think, you know, the tension
and to some extent you lose
revealed.
control of it as well. I mean, the ownership of the brand, I presume, will stay with Tourism New Zealand.
One of the things we've done, and Vincent's right, it was, look, push off, because we only want to get tourism right. We can't cope with everything else. But the question's clearly raised. Well, we've got this thing. It's a fantastic positioning for safe food, you know, healthy eating, etc. But we've got to do some work to make sure that we can live up to that in other categories. And so we've used it in events and things like that, but we haven't gone any further.
Dave, do you think New Zealand can live up to that brand when you start spreading it out across things like foodstuffs?
No, I don't. Certainly not without an immense amount of work. I mean, just this week we've seen a major American supermarket chain now demanding records on water use from its suppliers. New York Times just last week, a story looking very hard at the sustainability of our hoki fishery. Now, under that kind of scrutiny, we are just not going to come up trumps, I'm afraid.
How far off the pace are we?
We're a long way off the pace. I mean, the brand is a decade old. It's interesting that every 10 years the Ministry for the Environment also puts out a State of Our Environment report, and the findings in that one show that all our key environmental indicators are heading in the wrong direction, with a few notable exceptions. I mean, New Zealanders have, I think, the 6th highest environmental impact per hectare in terms of their environmental ecological footprint in the world. You know, that's significant. 1,100 New Zealanders die from air pollution every year, 1.5 times our road toll. You know, those are the kind of figures that we are not going to be able to sweep under the carpet. So we are going to have to face up to the fact we're going to have to do something about these figures.
On the other hand, the brand has also increasingly been associated with culture. Yeah. I recall early on the criticism of 100% Pure New Zealand was that it was yet more empty landscapes, but it seems that things like Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit movies, even Flight of the Conchords have actually meshed quite well, haven't they?
We pushed the thing very hard about the experience, not the environment. And as we say, the All Blacks doing a haka is 100% Pure New Zealand. And the interesting thing is that lots of our visitors get that part of it. It's the experience. It's bungee jumping is 100% Pure New Zealand, it's invented here, etc. So you can add layers of experiences and holiday things that people say, yeah, that was a New Zealand, a uniquely New Zealand activity for me, and 100% works perfectly in those areas.
Vincent, I was interested in your story. Although you praised what had been done with the brand, you did fairly strongly hint that perhaps some change would be in order, or some innovation. What would you like to see done?
Well, I don't really have an opinion. I'm just a reporter, Russell. But it seemed to me that there's still an amount of disquiet from within the industry, probably quite a parochial thing of saying, yeah, but what about Hawke's Bay and what about Marlborough? You know, we're 100% whatever. So they will need to evolve the campaign to go beyond the New Zealand thing and actually focus on the regions. And that's what's been so powerful, I think, with the Australian What's On campaign, of they've been able to sort of regionalise the effort. And of course that creates a problem, because you're not one thing anymore. Then suddenly you become the wine region, or the Sunshine Coast, or whatever it is. And so managing that change, I just think that the future of this brand now is, it's actually, we thought that part was hard, that the next part's much harder, because suddenly everyone wants a bit of it.
Well, I think that's all we have time for, but I hope we can stay 100% rather than 60%. Thank you all for your time. Thank you too, George Hickton, Vincent Heringer and Dave Hansford. Now, throng.co.nz, a website about television, serves an audience of thousands of viewers, and also quite a few of the people who actually make television. Its latest venture, Throng TV, takes it into new territory, and as Simon Pound discovers, it ruffles a few feathers.
It all started with that seminal dream factory, New Zealand Idol. Regan and Rachel Cunliffe started a blog to give fans a place to talk about their hopes, desires and picks for the show. When Idol finished, the Cunliffes wanted to keep the conversations going. So they set up Street Talk for Shorty Street, and for everything else, Throng.co.nz was born.
Throng itself is basically a one-stop shop for everyone that's either involved in creating television, broadcasting television, or your everyday people that sit at home and watch television.
Throng has gone from strength to strength. It's now in 4 countries: here, Australia, the UK and Canada. They say they get 350,000 visitors across the lot each month.
We're doing around about 350,000 visitors a month across the network.
Throng is based at the Cunliffe's house in Parakai. When not tending to the internet business, Regan can be found looking after his little boy Eli or working in the garden. On their modest section they have the house, seedlings, gourd fruit, strawberries, chickens, a lemon tree, cherry tree, grapevines, and more, so much more. The hyper-productivity doesn't stop there. They're launching Throng TV.
Who is this? We're from Throng.co.nz. From what? Exactly.
We are looking to celebrate, interrogate, and inform an industry that has proved itself incapable of doing it for itself.
That's Hamish Coleman-Ross. He's presenting and helping put together the new enterprise, along with Ben Kettle and Dana Bowes. The first episode has just gone live. It contains hardcore interviews.
Is your newsroom out of control? You know, and let's be honest, there have been some mistakes made. Despite the mistakes being made, are you telling your newsroom, come on, you know, let's just keep on being gutsy about what we're doing?
Of course. I'm not going to be pushed back from doing the hard stories because we've got a few woofters out there. What are we? A pack of poofters in this country? Well, what's going on?
I don't have to worry about the PR machine of networks. I'll ask the questions and damn it, I'll get the answers.
Parody and humour, as Dana attempts to become an A-list celeb.
Why wasn't I invited?
Oh, you'll be invited to this year's pool parties.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Would that be taking place in summer?
Yeah.
There's news from around the telly industry and coverage of the Qantas Awards.
It was the event you should have been at that Saturday night. Who else is going to do that? Who else is actually going to go out and make those events look as cool as they actually were?
They aren't shy and have firm intentions to shake up the industry.
There's no use us talking to each other about these issues. If you want to ask those questions, go to the source. Go and ask those people. Do not allow this information to be filtered through some PR company. We're not going to leave it up to people like print to make up the decisions of what's conclusive in this industry.
They've made a lively show that has the telly world talking and seem on the right track to meet their #1 goal.
I like to think of us as, you know, maybe E with bigger balls.
With bigger balls.
You know?
I'd like you nude on the bonnet.
Go check them out at throng.co.nz to see how their balls are shaping up.
Simon Pound with that report, and with that our show. Thanks to our Fiji panellists, Richard Pamatato and Julian Wilcox, and our Pure New Zealand panel, George Hickton, Vincent Heringer and Dave Hansford. And thanks to you for watching. We'll be back with Media 7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.